Have you ever wondered how House of the Dragon could be better? In this video, I'm going to explain what this show needs and why. Let's get to the most important thing in the show. Dragons. Obviously, they're important, but not for the reasons you might think of at first. Dragons need more attention in the show. As it stands, the only reason I care about them is because they're essentially a living nuke, and they're just this super cool piece of fiction. But I don't want to just like something because it's cool, I want an emotional attachment to it. And as it stands right now, it seems like the show isn't really interested in doing that, which is pretty bizarre to me. The dragons' personalities are there, and especially in the books. For instance, Caraxes is supposed to be extremely fierce, but I don't really get that sense in the show. I would describe all the dragons as fierce, but if I only watched the show, I wouldn't be able to differentiate Caraxes by his personality. And while Vhagar does seem old and sleepy, I want more in terms of uniqueness and quirkiness that would make the dragons feel more different besides just their appearance and size. And the dragons obviously shouldn't feel all the same anyway. They're magical wild animals that are surprisingly intelligent. Think about it, there's going to be a lot of battles in the show, and while we care emotionally about the characters, think how much better it'd be if we felt the same about the dragons as well. It would make it way more interesting and suspenseful to watch fights that go out this way. And a lot of people are going to be turned off from the CGI battles as well, and this will help quell that. I am going to address the elephant or elephants in the room when it comes to this topic though. And one of those is that we do get scenes showing dragon personality. One of them being when Laena wants death by dragon fire. Vhagar doesn't really want to do it, and she's confused by it. This scene would have been way worse if Vhagar just mechanically decided to burn her right away. And I really like this scene, but I need more of it. And this is definitely an example of dragon personality done right. The other thing I was gonna bring up was Luke's death. Ultimately, it's shown that dragons aren't slaves and they can do what they want. This is definitely interesting, especially from the implication it has on future battles, since this isn't really a development in the books. But the problem here is that it doesn't make me care about the dragons more. It seems like they put this in the show to make things unpredictable and make the Targaryen control over dragons more realistic. In Game of Thrones, Daenerys rarely doesn't have control over dragons, especially when she's riding them, except on a few occasions. But in the books, her dragons essentially do what they want. It's a lot more like the dragons just let Daenerys ride them than anything else. So while I think it's a good addition to the show, it still overall doesn't solve my first issue. And look what happens when you get bonding moments. Aemon bonding with Vhagar is one of the best moments in the series, and more moments like that, even with writers doing casual things with their dragons, will go a long way. So the next problem is how the show handles death and or action. A big allure in Game of Thrones is that main characters can die at any moment, especially if they make bad decisions. Obviously that's not here in season 1, and that's okay, but would have probably made the season better. While I have no doubt people are gonna die and the stakes are gonna be raised in later seasons, currently I'm gonna explain why it'd be beneficial they did take this route. For instance, after Viserys dies, the Greens gather all the lords to get them to swear allegiance to the Greens. Imagine if the Greens just cleared house here. Any lord who wouldn't pledge instantly would just be executed. This would be a lot more exciting and make the situation more dire, and you would have generally be concerned for Rhaenys and her escape, and any other character you like getting caught in this instance. This plays a big part into the relationship between choices and consequences. If the biggest consequence is death, then we're not seeing a lot of consequences. Sir Christian hits the future king, kills his lover, and nothing happens to him. Sure, Alicent is most likely protecting him, but still. In the books, he critically injures Joffrey in a tournament just for him to die days later, so it makes sense that he doesn't get punished. Another big problem this creates is the whitewashing of characters. Rhaenyra and Alicent specifically are a lot softer in the show as opposed to the books. While I can understand that they want people to sympathize with these characters, a lot of the times it just doesn't make sense. Like how they don't kill Laenor. Laenor sells her dragon, Sea Smoke. Dragons can't be claimed or bonded with if they already have riders. So now they have to find some way around that or just retcon it, which probably wouldn't be desirable. Also, would Laenor really leave behind the dragon that he loved to ride? Sure, he probably didn't love every aspect of his life, but he probably did like his parents, his dragon obviously, and fighting in battle. Not to mention that his death would be pretty impactful and even a turning point in the story for how serious it's getting. And the whitewashing just makes for awkward writing and character situations. For example, at the family dinner we see the kids of each faction fighting, but not Alicent or Rhaenyra. And it seems like they got along and have reconciled their differences. And this is how it's happened in the books. In our show of Amity, each woman wore the other's color and many declarations of love were made. But in Blood and Fire, as soon as Viserys dies, the Greens start to plot on how they should king Aegon. And Alicent is extremely implicit in crowning her son, which makes sense here because the Greens are ruthless. I can see them acting friendly in front of Viserys just to stab Rey in the back later on, because they set up the Greens as being less empathetic, which works. But the show wants to present our characters as more understandable and not as selfish, so when they make up at the feast, you're wondering how will this conflict start. So to solve this problem, Viserys brings up the prophecy of ice and fire, and Alicent misunderstands it, which is why she's down to crown Aegon. The problem here is that the show's forced to come up with some coincidence misunderstanding to push the story forward, and this could have all just been solved by not whitewashing the characters in the first place. If this one action was likely to start the war, then why do it by coincidence and not just character motivation or choices? Another problem with the action is we haven't seen any battle tactics or how our characters act in these type of high pressure sequences. We see a little bit of this in the stepstones, but ultimately I don't like this scene because it's just Daemon essentially having plot armor. He survives all this arrow fire and kills like 15 dudes before he gets struck down by some arrows. It's just somewhat reminiscent of Game of Thrones season 8 for me. And while it's cool that Daemon surrendered first and it definitely seemed like something he would do, I think more strategy in these battle sequences would go a long way. The last problem I'm gonna bring up here is the pacing of the show. This is essentially the prologue, so they had to speed through some parts. But what I'm worried about is how they'll handle future time skips later in the story. There's still a lot left to tell. Primarily what I think would be best is to slow down and take extra time to explain the side of the Greens. Aemon specifically has a lot of room for development here. It'd be cool to explore the relationship between him and Daemon, how similar they are to each other. After killing Luke, there's multiple ways to go with this character, and whether he embraces the fact that he's a kinslayer or will he reject and claim it was an accident. As it stands, the show wants us to empathize with the Greens and understand their side. The vast majority of people see them as the villains, which isn't inherently bad, but if they want to frame it like this, then I would definitely want some more screen time with these characters besides Alicent and Otto. These are all the things I would just want to see in season 2. If you like this speculation, check out this playlist. See you.